Hey everybody. So, I've been brainstorming today, kind of having a bit of an Einstein moment. And I apparently stumbled into what can only be referred to as the theory of everything. A single theory that unifies literally everything. As far as I could tell, there's almost nothing. I mean, there's one thing I thought of, but I have to wait until my Grok credits replenish. I actually ran out of them, surprisingly. But anyway. So the theory ties in pretty much everything. There is not a single iota of like everything from automobiles to zebras is all governed by one singular principle. Everything. From cell division to astrophysics. Absolutely everything is based upon a single unified principle. And it is obvious once you think about it. It is incredibly obvious, but no one has thought about it. So, before I say what it is, I'm going to give some backstory to basically the problem. I saw an article today that was talking about doing mathematical models for universes and how every single model, for some reason, ends up with no data. It's a dead, empty universe. Every single model is dead, empty, and void of everything. It's basically they set up the simulation and dead on arrival. Everything. The only time they are able to make the simulation, or not the simulation, unless they add in the variable of a observer to the universe. Essentially, without an observer, the universe collapses into nothing. With an observer, the universe exists and is just the same as our own. And that's a problem, because essentially they're saying that the universe didn't exist before conscious observation, which means that there was always a conscious observation or whatever. I mean, some people could say, oh, it's existence of God, yada, yada, yada. No. The, my unified theorem fixes a lot of problems. So the problem of that whole universal thing is actually solved by my problem. I'm not exactly sure what part of it is solved by it, but I know it is. I will have to look back at my notes. How exactly it's done. I'm not exactly sure how the math works myself. I know the theory, I don't know the math, if that makes sense. The theory is sound, the math is beyond me. Anyway, so, okay. Essentially, oh yeah, so the other one is quantum immortality. A weird theory that basically states that you have to remain conscious permanently. Like, if you are shot, you still persist in another world. And my issue with that immediately was, that's inefficient. There's a clue right there. I just gave you a clue to my theory. Efficiency. Constantly creating a universe over and over and over. Because think about it. If you have a world with infinite people in it, just to make the math easier, let's just say one world with infinite people in it, one person gets shot, makes another world also with infinite people in it. And let's say 500,000 of those infinite people all do the same thing. Repeats. You literally end up with a infinity times infinity to the power of infinity problem. You end up with infinite worlds to the point of nonsensicality. And that's the problem. The universe doesn't work like that. Reality doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work like that. Any kind of observable result in anything. So, I guess, okay. In extreme layman's terms, never noticed this, whatever. In extreme layman's terms, the simple underlying principle: energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Entropy always exists. Therefore, the infinite creation of multiple universes would mean that there's infinite amounts of energy, and that is not the case. There's a finite amount of energy that cannot be destroyed nor created. The amount of energy in the universe is a fixed, finite amount. It might be infinite in scale, but it's fixed. It's not infinity plus, it's just infinity, you could almost say. Or it's infinity minus 1 if you want to be technical about it. Like, the amount of energy in the universe is a fixed value. It breaks the laws of... It breaks every known rule to just make a carbon copy of reality with the exact same energy. I mean, heck, I looked into cell mitosis. Simply the act of cell division causes so many possible variations and variables that the collapse of those possibilities would actually generate heat. Like, the minute a cell tries to divide, it should explode. Yet we don't. Cells divide all the time, rapid fire, with very low probability of error. All the time. Why is that? Why are cells able to replicate with 99.9% efficiency? Every single time a cell divides, it's a near perfect copy, with some errors possible, usually caused by environmental or other third-party things. But if left untouched, cells basically divide pretty much perfectly, because it's efficient. The efficient method. Everything goes by the efficient method. Literally everything. The stars in the sky, light. In fact, the biggest factor, the most explored thing that makes my theory work is light. The mathematics behind how light behaves. Why not expand that to everything? We know a lot about light and how light works. We know all the mathematics, the mechanics, everything. It is like light is one of the most studied things we have. Because it's the most fascinating and the most abundant and the easiest to test theories with is light, just straight up visible light. How light behaves is very weird, especially in quantum. Light behaves in a quantum fashion. It is everywhere at once, but we only see, basically what's grounded in reality, the most efficient ways. That's why light doesn't really bend around a corner at all, because it's inefficient to do so. Could the light bounce off the wall and hit the backside of that, hit the backside of something? Yeah. Does it a little bit? Yes. And in fact, the fact that it's able to, just a little bit, like light go around a corner, even slightly, literally means that all light does is take the most efficient path. I mean, heck, that's how holograms work. Light is taking the most efficient path through a maze of water droplets, and we're taking advantage of that to make holograms appear. By simply creating the image in the most efficient path through a mist. And it makes a image appear in mist. The projection. Because we made it in such a way where it's the most efficient. Every single time you take the most efficient route or most efficient solution to something, it works. Efficiency is the key. The unified theory of everything? Pretty simple. The unified theory of everything is that everything runs efficiently. It's actually really basic. There is a underlying mathematical equation that is running 24/7, 365 for eternity and beyond. And that equation makes everything efficient. Essentially, that calculation that light does when it's bouncing around and trying to find the most efficient path to its destination applies to everything. From your thoughts, to a car, to the sky, to weather, to planets, to photons, to... I don't think there's something you can name where the theory doesn't apply. Because it makes it where the variables make sense. Every single thing where it's in practice, something happens different from the theory. Every time they do the math, they're like, oh, there is this really tiny infinitesimally possibility that something will happen. Like every single time an atom combines with another atom, there's a extremely tiny chance, I guess, it explodes. Why don't they? Because it's not efficient for them to do so. We could have random explosions in the air because of that, but we don't, because it's not efficient. It's not efficient for just random atoms in the air to just suddenly combine. That's not efficient. They have to have forces applied to them externally in order for them to do so. They don't just basically things don't spontaneously happen. In fact, here's the weirdest thing. My theory actually also makes it where there's a human factor involved, consciousness. I kind of interrupted myself, sorry. I was going to say, because of the human factor of consciousness being a slight pushing factor, basically a tipping the scales thing, it actually explains faith too, like faith healing and people having revelations and miracles happening, is basically because people have willed it into existence. You can call it prayer if you want, but basically mass willing of an event to happen will make it more likely to happen. Not by much. But basically, if it's basically a 50-50 between something happening, and you favor one over the other, there is a good chance that you basically tip the odds in that way. Is it guaranteed? Nope. But there is a very small observation and willpower factor in observations. Not proven yet, but that is just a small part of the theory, and if that part of the theory is eventually disproven, I mean, historically it actually is proven, but, I'll have to look more into it. But essentially, because of the way this works, people that say they can predict the future, bunk. The future is not predictable. The future can't be predictable. There are too many variables. And then you have, willpower factor. Okay. Must have been some traffic. That's why they were loud. Anyway. That's the nitty-gritty of it. The unified theory of everything is that everything is in a quantum state at all times, running. There's basically an underlying unified equation. In fact, now that I think about it, the whole what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? Efficiency would be the answer. Not 42, efficiency. But then you might ask, why do inefficient things exist? Simple. Errors. Errors, compounding errors, over and over and over. That's what happens. Errors. Sometimes the most efficient path isn't the most straightforward or even the most obvious or even the most logical. The most efficient, and I don't mean efficient as in it does everything. The horseshoe crab is probably the most efficient animal on the planet. It has been unchanged for millions of years. Completely unchanged. Why doesn't everything devolve into a horseshoe crab? Simple. Because efficiency is based upon current status. Everyone is so essentially it's basically like evolution. It's all going based on current status. You're evolving based upon what you are. Everything is evolving based on what it is. Environmental factors. How to put it? Essentially, the least complex route. That's why I like those, monsters with thousands of eyes or whatever. That's why they don't exist. That's why we have 2 eyes, because it's the most efficient. One eye sees left side, one eye sees right side. Do you need more? No. Well, that's why there is not a single creature besides flies with more than 2 eyes. And even then, flies technically don't even have more than 2 eyes. So, I actually think the way they view how a fly sees the world differently. I don't think a fly sees the world in multiple facets like they love to describe. I think a fly sees the world like a horse does. It's effectively the same mechanism. All those different facets are simply multiple irises that are all painting a 3-dimensional picture of the space around a fly. That's why it's impossible to sneak up on a fly, because it's literally looking pretty much, it's basically seeing itself in third person. That fly can see itself in third person. That's why it's so freaking hard to hit them. They can see where you're aiming at from pretty much all directions except directly below. That's why it's, I guess, somehow weirdly easier to strike a fly from below than it is from any other direction. Although, good luck actually doing that. But yeah, I think with their multiple facets is that the way their brain processes the images is it's really just 2 eyes. You have left hemisphere eye and you have right hemisphere eye. It's just taking the image from multiple different points of view and making it one static image. Well, not static, one dynamic image, but you get what I mean. What the heck is going on? I think it's a fire truck? Something going on. Anyway. Yeah, that's my theory. I'll be refining it and putting more into it, but it's basically diamond clad. I haven't thrown anything at it so far that it hasn't accepted. Literally everything from politics to religion to how humans behave to atoms. Literally it is the theory of everything. The unified theory of everything. That's what it is. Straight up. That's what it is. Everything behaves in a way that promotes long-term... Actually, no. Everything that behaves in a way that promotes short to long-term. Not necessarily long-term. It doesn't ever think ahead. Basically, it calculates short-term, least complex, most thought of. Basically like that. Least complex, most thought of, equals most successful. And just does that over and over and over and over, 1 billion, trillion, quadrillion times a second, all the time, forever. And what's funny is this whole theory even eliminates all time travel nonsense, because it makes it where it explains away how Mandela effects work. It makes it where if you were to change the past, and who says people haven't, people in the future maybe change things in the past. But the way my theory works is that because everything is basically a liquid tapestry, you change something in the past, it most likely had almost no effect. Some things change, our perception changes a bit, we remember what was, but no real big changes. Basically the whole butterfly effect of, oh crap, I stepped on a butterfly, I just caused World War III. No, that doesn't happen. if that were to happen, you would end up in an alternate timeline. The timeline that you were in is static. Pretty much future events are more or less stuck in stone. Or not future events, current events are stuck in stone. So the whole thing of going back in time to kill your grandfather, congratulations, you just ended up stuck in the past in an alternate timeline of your own making. Congrats. You didn't actually do anything because you would have caused a paradox. And the universe, to avoid a paradox, simply made an alternate dimension where you're in it and that's it. And probably just rejoined it with the rest of reality once you expired. Who knows? Or just discarded it. Heck, actually, maybe it did that. The main timeline basically threw you away as a, I don't want to deal with you right now. Assuming time travel is even possible, but yeah. So yeah, unified theory of everything. I thought it was cool. I'll look more into it, and I don't know, maybe I'll even publish a paper just for the hell of it. Who knows? I mean, Einstein was a clerk and had no real anything. He's considered one of the greatest minds, and yet he had no real training. Well, I'm kind of the same boat, am I? I am homeless, no real training, and yet I see the world differently. I think that's all we need, is sometimes a fresh perspective. Anyway, I've been rattling on long enough. I'll see you guys some other time. Bye-bye. Bradley Dragon out. Mwah.